Wait one more moment before you continue with your day. There is a reason your eyes stopped here instead of somewhere else. You almost kept scrolling. You almost let this moment pass like countless others. Yet something gentle, something impossible to explain, quietly asked your heart to remain still for just a little longer. If you have ever whispered, "Jesus, are you still listening?" then do not rush away from these words. If you have ever wondered whether heaven became silent because of something you did. If you have ever smiled in front of everyone while carrying invisible battles that nobody could see. Then stay with me. Because I could not let you leave without hearing this first. You have called this season many different names. Confusion. Delay. Waiting. Silence. Even abandonment. I have called it preparation. That difference is greater than you understand. There were nights when you believed nothing was happening. You thought your prayers disappeared into empty space. You wondered why doors stayed closed while others seemed to walk effortlessly toward blessings you had been asking for much longer. But every closed door became another wall protecting a future you were not yet ready to enter. You believed you were standing still. You were never standing still. Even now, while these words reach your heart, countless unseen pieces are moving together in ways your natural eyes cannot recognize. Do not mistake invisible movement for complete stillness. There is a difference. The seed beneath the ground appears motionless. Yet every second, life is quietly pushing upward. That has been your story. Listen carefully now, because what I am about to reveal is not what you expected. The greatest battle around you has never been about money. It has never been about recognition. It has never even been about the opportunities you think you lost. Those were only the visible chapters. The real battle has always been over your willingness to keep believing after disappointment tried to convince you that hope was foolish. Notice how often your circumstances tried to teach your heart to expect less. Notice how many times you lowered your expectations just enough to avoid being hurt again. That was never my voice. I never asked you to dream smaller. I never asked you to stop expecting goodness. I never asked you to prepare your heart for permanent disappointment. Those whispers came from fear pretending to sound wise. Fear often dresses itself like realism. It tells you that protecting yourself is the same thing as trusting me. It tells you not to hope too much. Not to believe too deeply. Not to expect anything beautiful. But I did not create your heart to survive without hope. I created it to live because of hope. There is something you still do not know. Several times during the past season, what looked like ordinary interruptions were actually extraordinary rescues. You never noticed because I protected you before you could recognize the danger. Some conversations never happened because I redirected someone's thoughts. Some opportunities disappeared because they carried hidden sorrow. Some relationships faded because their ending was mercy disguised as heartbreak. You mourned what I quietly removed. One day you will thank me for what I refused to allow. Until then, trust my vision more than your temporary understanding. Now let me tell you something your heart desperately needs to hear. I have watched every hidden tear. Not only the tears that reached your face. The ones that never escaped your eyes. The tears swallowed before anyone entered the room. The silent breaking that happened while everyone believed you were strong. Nothing about your pain has been invisible to me. Not one lonely drive. Not one anxious morning. Not one restless night. Not one whispered prayer that ended with, "Please, just give me one sign." You thought nobody answered. But every prayer changed something. Sometimes the change happened inside you before it happened around you. That is why the answer felt delayed. Transformation always begins in places people cannot see. You wanted immediate rescue. I was building lasting strength. You wanted instant clarity. I was creating unshakable faith. You wanted quick results. I was preparing eternal character. There is no wasted season in my hands. Even your questions became classrooms. Even your disappointments became teachers. Even your waiting became worship, though you never called it that. Now pause with me again. Because another truth is approaching. There have been moments recently when you almost settled. Not because that was your deepest desire, but because exhaustion whispered that anything would be better than uncertainty. You almost accepted less than the life prepared for you simply because waiting became heavy. I saw that moment. I saw the conversation you nearly had. I saw the decision you almost made. I saw the version of yourself who quietly said, "Maybe this is all my life will ever become." That was not your future speaking. That was temporary fatigue borrowing your voice. Do not confuse tiredness with truth. They are not the same. A weary heart can tell convincing lies. It says your best days are behind you. It says your opportunities have expired. It says everyone else has moved ahead. It says you missed your chance. But weariness has never been qualified to write your destiny. Only I hold that authority. Look back for just a moment. Think about every chapter you believed would destroy you forever. You survived each one. Not because you were stronger than the pain. Because my presence quietly carried what your own strength never could. Many times you called yourself lucky. It was never luck. Many times you called it coincidence. It was never coincidence. Many times you thought things somehow worked themselves out. No. I was there before you arrived. Preparing what you would later call unexpected. The miracles you celebrate rarely begin the day you notice them. They begin long before your eyes recognize them. Heaven has always been working ahead of your awareness. There is another mystery few people understand. Delay does not always mean resistance. Sometimes delay means precise timing. Imagine receiving tomorrow's answer before today's lesson is complete. Would you recognize its value? Would you protect it? Would you understand why it matters? Many blessings become burdens when they arrive before wisdom. That is why love sometimes waits. Not because it forgot you. Because it refuses to harm you. Remember that. Every season has a hidden assignment. Your current season has one that many overlook. You are learning how to recognize my voice without demanding immediate evidence. That kind of faith cannot be manufactured overnight. It grows slowly. Quietly. Faithfully. Like sunrise. Nobody hears daylight arrive. Yet suddenly the darkness cannot remain. Something very similar is happening inside you now. You think nothing has changed. Look closer. Months ago, certain words would have completely broken your peace. Today they still hurt, but they no longer own you. Months ago, rejection defined your identity. Today it still stings, but it no longer decides your worth. Months ago, uncertainty stole your sleep. Now, even while questions remain, a quiet hope keeps returning. That hope is not an accident. That is my fingerprint upon your heart. Do not ignore it. It is leading somewhere greater than you imagine. Now listen with unusual attention. Because this next part may explain feelings you have never been able to describe. Recently there have been moments when your heart sensed that something significant was approaching. You could not explain it logically. Nothing around you looked dramatically different. Yet deep inside, there was an unusual expectation. Almost as though heaven was preparing to speak. You wondered whether you imagined it. You did not. Sometimes before a new chapter begins, I awaken expectation before I reveal direction. Expectation prepares the heart. Direction follows. That is why you have felt restless. Not because you are lost. Because your spirit recognizes movement before your circumstances do. Do not fear holy restlessness. Sometimes it is simply the sound of tomorrow knocking softly upon today's door. There is another reason I asked you to stop here. Someone listening has secretly believed they disappointed me beyond repair. You have replayed old mistakes until shame became more familiar than peace. You keep introducing yourself to me through your failures. I keep looking at who I created you to become. We are not looking at the same person. You introduce yourself through regret. I introduce you through redemption. You remember your worst day. I remember every possibility still waiting ahead. Never believe that your past has greater authority than my mercy. It does not. Mercy speaks a language your mistakes cannot understand. Grace writes endings guilt could never imagine. You are not too late. You are not too damaged. You are not forgotten. And you are certainly not beyond my reach. Now breathe deeply. There is still more. Have you noticed how often distractions have increased recently? Small interruptions. Unexpected frustrations. Tiny conflicts. Random discouragement. None of them individually seemed significant. But together they kept pulling your attention away from hope. That pattern was not meaningless. When something valuable approaches, distractions often become louder. Not because they are stronger. Because they are desperate. Do not spend tomorrow arguing with distractions while destiny quietly waits beside you. Choose peace. Choose wisdom. Choose patience. Choose trust. Those choices will matter more than you realize. There is one final thing I must leave with you before this moment ends. You have been asking me to reveal the entire road. I have been asking you to trust the next step. Those are different prayers. One seeks certainty. The other creates relationship. I do not merely want to show you where you are going. I want to walk with you there. Because destinations eventually end. Relationship never does. That is why I have slowed certain answers. Not to punish you. To bring you closer than you have ever been before. But now, something has shifted. A conversation has already begun in places your eyes cannot see. A door you believed was permanently closed has quietly started to move. Someone's heart is changing. A forgotten promise is drawing closer than it appears. And what is about to happen next is connected to one decision you don't even realize you've already made. But before I reveal why that single decision changed everything, you must first understand what heaven has been protecting you from all along. That story begins next. The silence you have been trying to understand has never been empty. It has been occupied. Occupied by conversations you could not hear. Occupied by preparations you could not see. Occupied by mercy moving quietly before your next chapter ever reached your hands. My beloved child, before I reveal what heaven has been protecting you from, you must let go of one assumption that has weighed upon your heart for far too long. You have believed that every painful delay was evidence that something had gone wrong. But what if many of those delays were proof that something had gone wonderfully right? What if the very thing you called disappointment became the shield that kept your future intact? Think back to moments when your plans suddenly changed. The invitation that disappeared. The opportunity that unexpectedly ended. The relationship that slowly drifted away. The answer that never arrived. You stood in those moments asking, why? Heaven answered. You simply could not hear the answer yet. Not because I ignored your question. Because the answer depended upon events that had not unfolded. If I had shown you everything then, your heart would have tried to interfere with what only patience could complete. There are blessings that cannot survive impatience. There are miracles that only mature through waiting. There are answers that become beautiful only after enough time has passed for you to recognize them. This is why I have never measured your life by your calendar. I measure it by your becoming. Many people chase visible success while quietly losing themselves. I refuse to allow that to happen to you. You wondered why everyone else seemed to be running ahead while you remained in one place. But they were running races that were never yours. You cannot compare journeys that were designed for different destinations. Stop measuring your beginning against someone else's middle. Stop believing another person's applause determines your value. Stop assuming that visible speed always means divine direction. Sometimes the fastest road leads people farther from peace. Sometimes the slowest path carries them directly into purpose. I have always cared more about where you arrive than how quickly the journey appears. Now listen carefully. There were moments when your heart almost accepted a false identity. The world offered you labels. Failure. Too late. Unqualified. Ordinary. Forgettable. Not enough. One by one they knocked upon the door of your thoughts. Some stayed longer than they should have. Some became so familiar that you began speaking them over yourself. But I never called you by those names. I called you chosen long before fear called you forgotten. I called you loved before rejection tried to rename you. I called you mine before insecurity demanded proof. Do you understand why the battle became so exhausting? Because it was never simply about your emotions. It was about your identity. The enemy of peace knows something many people overlook. If he cannot stop your future, he will try to confuse your view of yourself before you reach it. Because a confused heart often walks away from doors it was created to enter. That is why I have been patiently rebuilding your confidence from the inside out. Not confidence rooted in circumstances. Confidence rooted in my presence. One survives only during good seasons. The other survives every storm. Choose the second. There is another mystery unfolding that I have waited for the right moment to reveal. You have asked me for signs. And I have given them. Not always through dramatic moments. Often through ordinary ones. The unexpected peace that arrived without explanation. The encouraging words from someone who knew nothing about your struggle. The sudden memory of Scripture exactly when you needed it. The quiet feeling that whispered, "Keep going." The door that closed before regret could enter. The strength that somehow appeared on days you believed you had nothing left. Those were not accidents. Those were reminders. Small enough that pride would overlook them. Powerful enough that faith would recognize them. My voice is not limited to extraordinary events. Sometimes I speak through the ordinary until your heart becomes sensitive enough to hear me everywhere. Now there is something else you must understand. The blessing ahead is not arriving merely to make your life easier. It is arriving to reveal who I have been shaping you into. There is a difference. Many people pray only for changed circumstances. Few pray for transformed hearts. Yet transformed hearts change circumstances in ways temporary miracles never can. You have been asking for open doors. I have been preparing someone capable of walking through them with wisdom. Because doors alone cannot sustain purpose. Character does. Now I want you to remember a moment that still quietly lingers in your memory. A day when someone underestimated you. A conversation where your kindness was mistaken for weakness. A season when your silence was interpreted as surrender. You almost defended yourself. You almost fought for recognition. Yet somehow you remained still. At the time it felt like losing. It was not. Every unnecessary battle you refused became strength saved for the moments that truly mattered. You do not have to answer every misunderstanding. Truth has remarkable patience. Eventually it introduces itself without shouting. You have spent too much energy trying to convince people who already decided not to understand you. Release that burden. Not everyone is assigned to understand your journey. Some are simply witnesses to it. Do not delay your purpose waiting for universal approval. Now your attention is being drawn toward something much deeper. There is a promise you quietly made to me. Perhaps you no longer remember speaking it. Perhaps it came through tears. Perhaps through desperation. Perhaps during one lonely night when nobody else knew how broken you felt. You whispered something like this. If you carry me through this, I will never forget you. I heard every word. And I have not forgotten. Neither have you. That promise is beginning to awaken again. Not because I demand perfection. Because relationship is calling you closer. You were never rescued merely to survive. You were rescued to shine. Not with loud attention. Not with pride. But with the quiet confidence of someone who has walked through darkness and discovered that light remained faithful all along. Now something extraordinary is beginning. Can you feel it? Not around you. Within you. Your perspective is changing before your circumstances do. That is always where lasting miracles begin. When vision changes. Choices change. When choices change. Direction changes. When direction changes. Destiny quietly follows. Never underestimate the power of one transformed perspective. One peaceful decision. One courageous prayer. One faithful step. Entire generations can be changed because one person chose to trust instead of surrender. Perhaps that person is you. Perhaps this very moment is far more significant than it appears. Perhaps this message reached you because tomorrow requires a version of you that refuses to walk in yesterday's fear. There is still one truth I have not fully revealed. It concerns something that has already begun moving toward you. It has your name connected to it. It has been delayed, but it has never been denied. The timing has been guarded with extraordinary care. And when you finally discover why heaven waited this long, you will realize that every unanswered question, every painful pause, and every unexpected detour was quietly leading you toward a moment far greater than anything you have imagined. But before I reveal what that moment truly is, you must first understand the promise that was spoken over your life long before you ever knew how to pray. And that revelation changes everything.